Thanks to Kalshi for sponsoring Mets Daily. Use code FANARCHBaseball to get $10 when you trade 10. A series win. How about that? The New York Mets, they're capable of winning series. They do that against the Angels. Let's start off. The Angels stink. It was nice to see this team win a series, but my God, the Angels are just terrible. But nonetheless, Mets take care of business. At least 2 out of 3. They don't get the sweep. They lose on a walk-off Saturday. What can you do? You take the series win, and now they go to Colorado where they have to win. Mark Vientos, this is a guy who is going to get traded. Mark Vientos is not going to be a Met on August 2nd. He's just not. He's going to be traded. I'd be shocked if he was still with this franchise. And if that's the case, he has to raise his trade value. He did that on Sunday, hitting 2 homers. He's hitting a little bit better. Obviously carried the offense in a 5-1 win. Clay Holmes, of all the David Stearns moves that have not worked, one that he was knocked on was Clay Holmes and making him a starting pitcher. Well, that's turned out to be genius. Clay Holmes looks like a Cy Young candidate. He has been fantastic in the starting rotation and one of the lone bright spots, him, McLean, in that Mets rotation, and Peralta. Otherwise, it's a bunch of TBDs like today. An opener, and then they're going to trot David Peterson out of the bullpen, see if it works that he doesn't start the game. But, Clay Holmes has been a revelation to this team. And, good to see the team win a series finally. Not really good what happened in some of the weekend, though, and that's Carlos Mendoza throwing the replay guy, Harrison Friedland, under the bus. The Mets assured on Friday that Mendoza is safe. They don't intend to make a change. Now, that could change at some point this season. I don't think that means, in June that he's safe. I think for right now, they're saying he's safe. I hate that. I don't think there's any reason to tell him he's safe. I mean, he's done a terrible job, so I don't love that. And then I didn't love over the weekend. Immediately, he has that happen. Now, I get it. They go to their replay guy to determine if they should review something. And on Friday night, a big difference in the game, they don't review the play at third where he was clearly out, and he was out before the run scored at home. That would have ended the inning with no runs. That's one less run. I mean, I would challenge it either way. But after the game, he threw the replay guy no one had ever heard of under the bus. And I just think that's a Bush League move. No one hears of Harrison Friedland. Now we all know him as the guy who messed up the replay on that one time. And, for a manager who's held no players under the bus to then throw the replay dude under the bus who makes a fraction, and I mean a micro fraction of his salary as manager, to me is Bush League. Did not like that from Carlos Mendoza. When Mark Vientos ran through the third base sign, you didn't bench him that day. You didn't bench him the next day. You did nothing. You said, we talked about it, and that's that. You hold 0 players accountable, but then you're going to hold the guy no one's heard of accountable. I thought that was a very, minor league move by Carlos Mendoza. That's not what a good manager does. You accept the blame. You said, we missed it there, and that's that. But now that he's safe, he said he thinks he can do what he wants. I'm not a fan of it. And again, I don't dislike Carlos Mendoza as a person, but he's rubbing me the wrong way. Pause. In every day after every game, it's almost every game, and then Sunday again they don't replay, and it would have been overturned. Soto, the glove throw to first where the glove was bobbled, he threw the glove, he would have been safe. You don't carry these challenges into the offseason with you. You don't carry them with you. They don't carry over to the next game. Use your freaking challenges. This manager is so afraid to push the button on these challenges. It's unbelievable. So, hated that from Mendoza. And again, like we said on Friday, and he did it again over the weekend, stop pinch hitting Austin Slater for MJ Melendez. Stop with Slater for Melendez. Melendez is one of the very few hitters in your lineup that's hitting. I don't care if it's a lefty pitching. Austin Slater sucks. You don't need to use every player on your roster just because they're there. There's no more participation trophies. We're in May. You did that the first week. You did the first 2 weeks. No more of that. Just because Austin Slater is here doesn't mean you use him to pinch hit for MJ Melendez because he's on your roster. Hit him for someone who's struggling. If it's Brett Beatty, a lefty comes in, put him in for Beatty. Stop putting him in for Melendez. It hasn't worked once. Even in a series win, this team pisses me off, guys. Even in a series win. But Kalshi does not piss us off. Baseball season is here, and you can trade every game on Kalshi. On Kalshi, you can trade any game that you would like. The Mets are trading at a probability of just 2% winning it all, meaning a $100 trade is going to get you a whole lot of dough. You'll pay out over $3,700 if the Mets were to win the World Series. Listen, you're saying there's a chance. The Mets are trading at just around 56% to beat the Rockies today, which is $100 to get you right around $170 if the Mets win, and you can pick any MLB market. On Kalshi, you're trading against peers in a live market, meaning there's no house. And as the probability changes, you can buy in and out of your position. For a limited time, download the Kalshi app and use that code FANARCHBASEBALL to get $10 when you trade 10. KALSHI, Kalshi. Trade on anything. The Mets are in a spot here where they have almost nobody healthy. It's pretty incredible when you think about it, how this team just cannot get healthy. Ronnie Mauricio, the latest victim, out 6 to 8 weeks. He joins Luis Robert, Francisco Lindor, Jorge Polanco, Kodai Senga, AJ Minter, and others on the IL, but those are the main guys. And now the Mets, without both their starting shortstops, they're going to have to continue to play Bo Bichette at his natural position as short. And then we're going to, in some way or another, Brett Beatty is in the lineup. And it's just like every time I'm like, option him enough with Brett Beatty, he has to play because there's too many injuries. So they call it Vidal Brujan. I'm sure we'll see Brujan in one of these games against the Rockies, unfortunately, that we're at that point. We're in the Vidal Brujan point of the season. We're in the Vidal Brujan, Andy Ibanez, Austin Slater point of the season on May the 4th. May the 4th be with Mets fans who had to put up with this. But, Mauricio injury sucks. Listen, I know he's getting a lot of heat. You shouldn't slide into first base, but I get why he did it in that spot, guys. The guy was charging at him to try and get him out at first, and he went to the right side of the bag, slid. Ended up being safe, by the way, after the challenge. So, I understand him doing it, but in the end, you got to worry about your health, and with Lindor being out, I think you got to take extra precautions. So, yeah, it was probably dumb, but also I get in that situation why he slid, because he wasn't trying to collide into the guy who was coming right after him, and he wanted to get to the right side of the bag, although it doesn't make much of a difference, and sliding into the first base usually will always slow you down. That's what they teach you. So, not smart, but I understand it in some aspects, but the Mets, it's going to hit a point here where they're going to have to go to the youth. There's just too many injuries. We don't know the timeline yet on Robert with the lumbar spine issue, Polanco, bursitis, and the wrist. I think at some point this month Polanco will be back. I don't know about Robert. Lindor, I don't think it's going to be till late June or July. Mauricio now, it's going to be late June or July. So probably, remember, the first half of the season usually is like mid to late June, 81 games. All-Star break's always a little bit later. Or maybe it's early July, whatever the exact date, 81 game point. But halfway through the season, they're going to be out without Mauricio and likely without Lindor. So it's going to be a while. And then AJ Minter, his clock for rehab is running low. They're worried a little bit about his velocity being down. But with the rehab clock winding out, the Mets are going to have to call him up here sometime this road trip. So the Mets will likely, fingers crossed, get A.J. Minter back for their bullpen. And boy, do they need it. They need that arm. A.J. Minter was signed here to be a setup man. He was signed to be a closer-like / setup man. And they're going to be at a point where they may have to use him at closer if they have faith in him. So we'll see about his velocity. But, I don't think it's an injury-related reason, but they have worried that his velocity is a little bit down. You got to consider calling up A.J. Ewing. The Mets are in a position here where you have to consider A.J. Ewing tearing the cover off the ball in AAA. It's been very soon, but with all these injuries, and remember, A.J. Ewing plays a good center field. I don't need to see Andy Ibanez and Vidal Brujan and Tyrone Taylor and, Austin Slater every day. I just don't. I have no issue if the Mets said, we're calling up A.J. Ewing to play center field. We're going to play Benjamin right, Ewing in center, Soto in left, D.H. Melendez. That, to me, gives you your best potential lineup. You're probably going to have Beatty at third, Vientos at first, Bichette at short, and Simeon at second. That, to me, makes a lot of sense. You have Alvarez and Torrens, who got a new 2-year, $11 million extension. So good for Luis Torrens getting paid. Paid him a good amount to be a backup catcher. You wonder what that means for Alvarez. Do they trust Alvarez in the future? Torrens is not going to be the starter, but you wonder what it means for Alvarez, if it means anything at all, or they just pay their backup nicely. But the Mets got to take 2 or 3 in Colorado. They got to take 2 or 3 or sweep. But A.J. Ewing, should they call A.J. Ewing up? Let us know in the comments below. Make sure you hit that thumbs up on this video. Follow me at Jake Brown Live on all social media. And Mets, remember, 5:40 today. Earth moved it up because of inclement weather. Might be some snow in Colorado this week. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, off day on Thursday, and then 3 in Arizona over the weekend. Shout out to Christian Scott, by the way. Looked brilliant. I'm glad they gave him another shot. He was great. Kept the Mets in that game. Pitched really well. Good for Christian Scott in that win on Friday. Comeback victory for the Mets. And Ronnie Mauricio, unfortunately, the homer to put him ahead, and then fractures his thumb the next day. Just a brutal turn of events. But we'll be back here tomorrow on Mets Daily. Thanks for watching.